Chapter 7. I didn't even get to say goodbye to her, Buddy said to Jonathan later that evening. Aaron was still out, so Buddy had come into their room to see if he could figure out what went wrong. Everything had been going great with Jenna. Better than he could have hoped for. And then her mother. Sorry, Buddy. Some parents are like that. Do you know anyone that it's happened to? Buddy asked. Well, no, Jonathan admitted. But I'm sure it's happened before. Some parents don't think that their children are ready to date when they reach that age. I'm 19. She's 20. It's not like we're babies. But even as he said those words, the thought was taking form in his head. It's me, isn't it? Charlotte doesn't want her dating me because I have Down syndrome. How unfair was that? Surely that's not it. I bet it is, Buddy said glumly. And stop calling me Shirley. Jonathan laughed. At least you can still joke. I want to take Jenna on a date. She likes me. She told me so. Oh, yeah? Yeah. And I like her. And we're like each other. I don't understand why her mother would tell me to stay away from her. Some people just don't understand true love, Jonathan said in a dreamy voice. True love? He liked the idea. Jenna Burkhart was his true love. It had a nice ring to it. Now, if he could figure out how to get her mother to allow him to take her on a date. Are you going to sulk all day? Mom asked shortly after lunch. I'm not sulking, Jenna mumbled in return. It was Monday, the day after Mom had told her and Buddy that they couldn't date. How did she expect her to act? Jenna Gale, her mother gently started. You know I love you, but you're not ready for a step like that. You might not ever be. Jenna picked up the laundry basket full of wet clothes and headed for the door. Jenna Gale, her mother called. Jenna stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. You understand? It wasn't a question, but a statement. Once again, her mother was telling her how to feel. She dropped the basket on the floor with a loud plop. No, Mom, I don't understand. I don't understand what's wrong with Buddy. I don't understand when you say I'm not ready, and I really don't understand why you think you know all my feelings. I'm the only one who knows that. Her mother looked shocked. Her mouth hung open and her eyes didn't blink. Jennifer Abigail, you know you will not raise your voice to me in this house. Jenna hadn't meant to get loud, but she was just so frustrated. I'm sorry, Mom. And she was. But tonight after supper, you will be responsible for all the cleanup. Yes, Mom. That was okay. She did most of the work each night. And you will not be allowed to go to the quilting circle tomorrow. No quilting circle? That was a terrible punishment. If there was one thing Jenna loved, it was to quilt. She loved making the tiny little stitches, the hidden patterns in the blanket meant to warm, and she especially loved that the quilts they made at the quilting circle were donated to the Clarita Clarita school auction each year, and to not be allowed to go. That was something close to torture. That's mean. The words slipped out before she could stop them, and once they were said, there was no taking them back. Jenna stubbornly lifted her chin and waited for her mother to take a second week of quilting from her. But it didn't come. So be it, her mother said, and turned her attention back to the laundry. Buddy waited until no one was around. Then he went to the barn and started the tractor. It was the old one, the extra one they used for travel to and from town. His parents had taken Prudy somewhere on the new one. Aaron was off visiting somewhere, and Jonathan had promised Buddy that he wouldn't tell. So Buddy had a plan. He would drive the tractor to Jenna's house and talk to her mom. Maybe in the light of day, things would be better. Plus, it had been 2 days. Maybe she'd have had time to cool down. That meant not to be so angry. Aaron had taught him that one. Buddy had written it in his notebook so he wouldn't forget. Except he had never driven the tractor by himself as far as it was to Jenna's house. But how hard could it be? How different was driving the tractor on the road instead of the field? No different, except he would be on the road and not plowing. He was 19, plenty old enough to drive to a girl's house by himself, a woman's house. He silently corrected himself, and that's exactly what he planned to do. Don't forget to stay on the right, Jonathan reminded him. Yeah, I know, Buddy said. Just like a buggy. That's right. And when a car comes up behind you, pull over to let them pass. Even in a tractor, Buddy finished. Jonathan nodded. You've got this. Yeah, Buddy said. I've got this. He smiled a little to himself as he chugged down the road. Once he got there, and convinced Charlotte to allow him and Jenna to date, he would drive back home, and that would prove how grown up he was to his mom and dad. Perfect. In no time at all, he was pulling down the drive that led to Jenna's house. Traveling by tractor was much quicker than going by horse and buggy. Another good reason to prove to his parents that he could handle the responsibility of driving the tractor off the field. He pulled the tractor to a stop, then double-checked the brake before heading up the porch steps and knocking on the door. Shuffling sounds drifted from the house, along with approaching footsteps. Then finally, the door was opened. Jenna stood in the doorway, looking even prettier than she had Sunday night. "Buddy, what are you doing here?" His brilliant plan somehow slipped his mind, and he stood there, floundering for words. I came to see you." He cleared his throat, and when she didn't say anything, he continued. "I wanted to talk to your mom and explain to her." She glanced backwards as if the answers were sneaking up behind her. "She's not here." But he tried to hide his disappointment. How was he going to talk to Jenna's mom if she wasn't at home? "She'll be back before supper," Jenna said. "But I don't think it's a good idea for you to wait." "Is she still mad?" He was hoping she had calmed down a bit. Jenna nodded. "Yeah, a little. A lot, really." Another piece that wasn't part of his plan. "Maybe I should go." She let herself out of the house, closing the door behind her. "We could sit on the porch swing for a bit." "Yeah, okay." She made her way to the end of the porch and sat down on the swing. She held it still with her feet as he settled in next to her. "I like this swing," Buddy said after a few moments of gently pushing themselves back and forth. "We had one on our porch in Yoder." "At your old house?" "Yeah." "Do you miss it?" She hesitated so long he thought she might not answer at all. "Sometimes. It was where I grew up." He could understand that. "Did you have lots of friends there?" "No," she said quietly. He couldn't believe his ears. How could a sweet and pretty girl like Jenna Burkhart not have so many friends she couldn't count them all? "You didn't? Why not?" "I don't know." She shook her head. "I'm not smart, Buddy." "That shouldn't matter," he said. "You have lots of friends?" He nodded, suddenly feeling very important. "Of course I do. There's Jonah and Jonathan and Aaron and Hannah." He ticked them off his fingers one by one. "They're your brothers and your sister. And my friends." "I don't have any siblings." His heart hurt for her. No brothers, no sisters, no one to turn to if she needed a hug or someone to talk to, no one to share secrets with. "I'll be your friend," he finally said. "We aren't already friends?" Her expression crumpled. "Of course. But I just wanted to say that. You have a friend in Wells Landing." She giggled. "You sound like one of those stickers the English put on the back of their cars." He laughed right along with her. I kinda do. Thank you, buddy. For what? For being my friend. She pushed the strings of her prayer covering behind her shoulders. Thank you for being my friend right back. He smiled at her as they continued to gently swing back and forth. It was a perfect moment. The wind was blowing slightly, the birds singing in the trees. He was sitting next to the most beautiful girl he had ever seen. He leaned in a little closer, wanting to be nearer to her. Then, before he could chicken out, he swooped in and kissed her on the side of her mouth. I'm sorry, he said immediately after. He scooted away from her, somehow knowing that the best thing to do was put some distance between them. He just didn't know who needed it the most. He needed to pull away from her to keep himself from kissing her again, and she looked so shocked. He thought it best to get out of her reach. One hand pressed to her lips, she stared at him. You kissed me. I'm sorry, he said again. She remained as she was, hand pressed to her face, eyes wide. He couldn't tell if she was stunned from disgust or excitement. Girls were hard to figure out. You're sorry? She asked. Her voice was like a wisp of smoke. It was gone before he even knew it was there. I'm sorry. He jumped to his feet. He was so stupid. How could one man be so stupid? He should have asked her if he could kiss her. He was too impulsive. He always had been. Hadn't Mom fussed at him at that very thing nearly every day of his life? The answer was yeah. Mom had done everything she could to teach him to think before he acted. He thought that he mastered the technique, but one afternoon with Jenna Burkhart, and he forgot everything he had learned. Jenna grabbed his hand, stopped him from racing down the stairs and back to his tractor. Don't be sorry. That was the best kiss of my life. Really? Heat flooded his face, and he wondered if he was a nice shade of pink or blistering red. She nodded. Yeah. He eased back down beside her. Best kiss. Best. But how many other men have you kissed? There went his impulsive nature again. One day he would learn to think before speaking. None. But it was still the best. That was all he could ask for. Mine too. Only? She asked. He nodded. Only and best. Buddy was floating on air. That was a saying. He had written it in his notebook. It meant that he was so very, very happy. And he was. He had kissed Jenna Burkhart, and it had been the best and first kiss for both of them. He had spent the afternoon with her while her mom and her mommy were at their quilting circle. It had been a wonderful time. They had stayed on the porch in her big swing and talked. Just rocked back and forth and talked about this and that. about church and the singing and a bunch of other things that weren't important and yet were, all at the same time. But he hadn't asked her about dating. He wanted to ask her out, but he knew that he would have to clear that with her mom, and that would have to wait for another day. He'd been gone from his house for long enough. Now he had to get back home. Going back, even driving the same way that he had come, was hard. He had to keep remembering that he needed to turn opposite from his trip to her house. He got turned around twice, but managed to get himself back on the right track. But it hadn't taken that long, and he was surprised to see his mom and his dad and his brother Jonathan all standing outside in the yard when he pulled up. He turned off the engine and hopped down from the tractor seat. He was proud of himself. He had driven all the way to Jenna's house and back again without getting completely lost or having an accident. He was grown up, much more than his dad gave him credit for. Hi, he waved at everyone before taking a good look at their faces. They all looked angry. Well, his mom and dad did. Jonathan looked like he would rather be any place else but there. Where have you been? His mother's voice was shrill, and he thought if she got much louder, it would disappear altogether, like those dog whistles they had at the vet's office. It was hard for him to believe in something he couldn't understand, but the dogs went crazy for it, so there had to be something there. Jenna Burkhart's. Buddy looked from one of them to the other. I told you, Jonathan said. He crossed his arms, but his expression didn't change. He still looked like he would love to be somewhere else, any place else, without all them. Not now, Jonathan, his mother said. Who gave you the permission to take the tractor to the Burkharts? Dad pinned Buddy with a look. Dad pinned Buddy with a look, a very stern, complicated look. No one, he stammered. Why is everyone angry with me? No one knew where you were, Mom said. Jonathan did. Buddy gave a nod toward his brother. I told them. Jonathan shifted, but Buddy couldn't tell if he was upset with only him or just in general. You're not supposed to take the tractor out alone, Mom said. He had never driven the tractor alone, but he hadn't known that he wasn't supposed to, only that it was something he hadn't done yet, and he felt his chances to show his mom and dad how much he had grown up over the last couple of years slip away. I didn't know. You should have asked. his mom said. Did you purposely wait until we were gone before leaving? Dad asked. No. Are you telling me the truth? Dad asked. Yeah, kind of, but not really. It had all just worked out that way. He hadn't wanted to explain why he was going to a girl's house. It wasn't because he thought they wouldn't let him drive, so he was telling the truth, mostly. The screen door slammed behind Prudy as she came out onto the porch. Is Buddy in trouble? Yes, Mom said. But at the same time, Buddy had answered no. He turned back to his mom. I'm in trouble? You shouldn't have gone without letting us know where you were, Mom said. Jonathan knew. Why couldn't that be enough? He clenched his fists at his sides as his anger built. He hadn't done anything wrong. For the first time in his life, he had a friend that he wasn't related to, and he wanted to go see her. What was the harm in that? Buddy, his father's tone was full of warning, but he was having none of it. This wasn't fair. How can I be in trouble when I didn't do anything wrong? His voice rose on the end until he was almost yelling. Dad grabbed his arm and shook him a bit. It was something Dad did to make sure he had Buddy's attention, but Buddy wasn't up for that today. He pulled away. Don't. He squeezed off and refused to let his father or mother come close. You let Prudy do whatever she wants. She slams the screen door all the time, and you never say one word to her about it. And I can't drive the tractor? That isn't fair. Maybe not, Dad said, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Those words echoed in his head as he lay flat on his back in the hayloft. He found his old baseball and was tossing it into the air, doing his best to catch it before it conked him on the nose. It isn't fair. But that's the way it is. How could that be? Meeting Jenna, having her move to Wells Landing, her having had an accident that caused her to be more like Buddy than anyone else. It all had to be part of God's plan. So if it was, why couldn't everyone else see it? He pitched the ball into the air and caught it with a soft thwack against his palm. After he yelled at his dad, he had been grounded, sent to the barn to do chores, and was now wondering if he would ever be able to see Jenna Burkhart again. Church, of course, but that was nearly 2 weeks away. 12 days, he could count. People might not believe that he was capable of driving across town alone, but he had finished school, regular school, and he could count. There were 12 more days before he would be able to see Jenna again. But even then, he wouldn't be able to spend any time with her. His parents thought he was too much of a baby to ride alone, and her mom didn't think she needed a boyfriend. What was wrong with everybody? He tossed the ball into the air and once again caught it. Buddy? Up here. He had thought about not answering, but what good would it do? Besides, he wanted to talk to Jonah. Maybe he could help Buddy understand even better. Maybe if he explained it all to Jonah, then his brother might help Buddy change their minds about the situation. Jonah's head came into view at the top of the ladder, but he didn't crawl up any further. Wanna come down and talk? Again, the ball went up into the air. Again, it thwacked against his palm. Can I stay here instead? You still want to talk? Buddy tossed the ball and nodded his head. Okay, but you have to stop throwing that ball. It's making me dizzy. It's making me dizzy. Buddy tossed it one last time, but missed it on the way down. It crashed onto his nose. It crashed into his nose with an eye-watering crunch. Ow! Are you okay? Jonah came up another rung on the ladder. Buddy pushed himself into a sitting position and wiped his nose and checked his fingers. There was blood, but not much of it. I guess, he said, but he tilted his head back just to be sure. Jonah handed him a bandana. Thanks. Buddy wiped his fingers, then held the cloth to his nose. I heard what happened. They are so not fair. I know. And they let Prudy get away with everything. I know. And that's not fair. It's not always fair, buddy. It's supposed to be, Buddy countered. Scoot over. Jonah shooed Buddy to one side as he climbed up into the loft next to him. I want to tell you a story. Buddy nodded, then waited for Jonah to begin. Do you know what my most vivid memory is? No. Being at the hospital after you were hit by a car. I wasn't ever hit by a car. You were, Jonah said. Broke your leg. Broke your leg in 2 places. But he shook his head, unable to find the memories. I never broke my leg. He had broken his arm once. The pain was incredible. If he had done something like break his leg, surely he would remember that. You did. I was 6 or 7, and you were about 2, maybe a little older. I had gone across the street to check the mail. Then you should have gotten hit by Then you should have gotten hit by the car. Maybe, but I was older and knew to look both ways. I told you to wait on the side of the road for me. But I didn't. Nope. Ran right out in the road and broke my leg, Buddy said in a wonder. How was he only now hearing this story? Jonah nodded. But you didn't just break your leg. You also hit your head. It knocked you out for a couple of minutes. He blew out a breath with the memory. Mom was so upset. Because I'd hurt myself? Yeah, but also at me for putting you in danger. I don't understand. The doctor told Mom and Dad that you could have really hurt yourself badly. Maybe even died. You were lucky to get out of it with a concussion and a broken leg. How's that your fault? I was supposed to be watching you. Buddy frowned. That's not fair. Then he caught himself and pointed at his brother. Ah, you got me. Jonah pointed a finger back at him. It's not always fair. But Buddy started, but he didn't know how to finish. Jenna Burkhart, he finally said. What about her? What about her? I went to see her this afternoon. I went to see her mom about why she says we can't date. Jonah grinned. You want to date a girl? I surely don't want to date a boy, he joked. I would hope not, Jonah said. And stop calling me Shirley. The last they both said at the same time. They sat that way for a moment, smiles on their faces, just being together. Then Jonah spoke. Just give Mom time. She's always been afraid that you would get hurt, that you didn't have the brain power to keep yourself safe. But I do, he protested. Jonah nodded. I know that, and you know that. It just might take Mom and Dad a little longer to figure it all out. You're awfully happy this evening. Mom handed the bread basket to Mommy and gave Jenna a questioning look. I am? She tried to stop smiling, but it just wasn't possible. She had been more than happy to see Buddy. What a great surprise! And to know that he had come over to talk to her mom about the two of them. That made it all better. Once Mom saw what a terrible man Buddy... Once Mom saw what a terrific man Buddy was, then she couldn't protest to the two of them, countering how could she? But until she could convince her mother of that, she needed to keep his visit to herself. She didn't want Mom to have any more things to hold against him. I suppose she did her best to make her smile smaller, even just the tiniest bit, but she didn't think she succeeded, mostly because Mom and Mommy continued to look at her as if she had totally gone crazy, like Daniel Weaver, who lived at the end of their lane in Yoder. His family finally had to come get him. He was walking around the yard in his underwear and button-down shirt, a dog leash in one hand and an ice cream scoop in the other. There were no dogs or containers of ice cream anywhere near. She was fully dressed, not carrying anything strange, and was seated at the supper table. Yet that was the look they were giving her. We had a really good meeting this afternoon, Mom said. Jenna could feel her mom's gaze on her, almost like a touch as she watched her. Jenna tried to look interested, but not overly so. Once again, she did her best to tone down her smile, and it all felt a little weird, kind of like she had borrowed someone else's body, but not really, because that wasn't possible. You should be sad you missed it. Jenna scooped up a bite of potatoes and popped it into her mouth. I am. I love the quilting circle. I know, Mom said. And don't talk with your mouth full of food. Yeah, Mom. But by then she had shoveled in a bite of peas. She had a feeling she needed to eat and get out of the kitchen as quickly as possible. Mom seemed to know that something was going on and was determined to find out what. Jenna knew some of it could be her own imagination, but how much of it was anybody's guess? Honestly, Jenna Gale, you are supposed to be a young lady, and sometimes I feel like you are a rowdy little boy deep inside there. Yeah, Mom. She took a big gulp of water and trying to wash down the too big bite of food she had just put into her mouth. For pity's sake, Mom fussed. I can see that you want to leave the table, but please don't choke to death trying to accomplish that. Yes, Mom. Charlotte. Jenna and her mom both turned as Mommy spoke. She didn't say much these days, not like she used to, but Jenna couldn't blame her. She had lost her son, then her husband. Somewhere in all that, Jenna had had her accident. Mommy had a lot to deal with over the last few years, but these days she just didn't seem to be happy, and more than anything, she prayed for her grandmother to have happiness, for that to sparkle to return to her eyes. Yeah, Mom asked. Leave the girl alone. She has enough trouble without you staying on her all the time. Jenna knew that meant to fuss at a lot. She looked to Mom. She was starting to turn a shade of purple that Jenna had never seen before. In all honesty, she wasn't sure why Mom and Mommy stayed with each other. It certainly wasn't out of love, and Mommy had other children she could have gone to live with after Dottie had died, and but she and Mom had moved in together, and it had been that way ever since. I should leave her alone? Mom asked. Mommy nodded. That's right. She's a good girl, and she knows what's right and what's wrong. You grounded her from the meeting tonight. There's no need to rub it in. There's no need to rub it in that she didn't get to go. She turned to Jenna. Next week, she said, everyone will expect you to be there. Next week, she said, everyone will expect you to be there next week. Yeah, Jenna said with a nod. I plan on it. Mommy smiled, but still appeared sad. Good. Now finish up your supper and get ready for bed. It's already late. Yes, Mommy. Jenna made 2 big bites out of the food left on her plate. Then, still chewing, she took her dishes to the sink and ran a little water on them. She washed her hands, dried them on a towel, then stopped to swallow the food in her mouth. She managed to get half of it down, chewed a couple more times, then swallowed the rest. Mom made a noise that was part disgust and part resignation. At least that's what it sounded like to Jenna, but she wasn't staying around to ask her mom exactly what it meant. Good night, she murmured, and started for the stairs. But she wasn't out of earshot when she heard her mother start. If we don't get a handle on her, she won't be fit for company. Charlotte, that girl is fine. Leave her be. You shouldn't worry so much about it. Her mom's tone turned gentle, lost the hard quality that it had just moments before. Of course I worry about her. She's why I'm here after all. Maybe part of the reason. What did Mommy mean? It's all the reason, Mommy continued. That girl needs to be treated no different than any other. She's special, Mom said. She has special needs. A girl with special needs can't be treated like any other girl. She only has special needs because you say she does. She's trying hard to be like everyone else. She's not like everyone else. And she never will be, Mommy said, unless you allow her to try. Jenna felt helpless. All she wanted to do was see Buddy, spend some time with him. Yet it had been days since she had seen him last. It didn't seem like a big thing to ask for, and yet she didn't know how to go about it. Mom didn't like him hanging around, and they hadn't planned to go into town at all this week. Even if they did, even if they did go into Wells Landing, there was no telling whether they would run into him or not. She had thought about going out to the phone shanty and seeing if Buddy's family had one close to them. Maybe he would get the message from her. But it's like going to town to find him was a stretch. She just wished she had made some kind of arrangement to see him again. When he left on Tuesday, he'd said that he would see her soon, but it was Saturday, and she hadn't seen him since. Tomorrow was Sunday, the off Sunday for the district, and 7 more days before she would even get to see him at church. If he even came to church, he would, unless he was sick, or he had fallen and hurt himself, or maybe even if his mom was sick and couldn't make it to the service. But those ideas didn't seem likely either. 7 days from Sunday, could she hold on until then before she got to see him? She would have to. Come on. Mommy stuck her head in Jenna's room, startling her from the novel she was reading. It was one she had found in the paperback book bin at the library. They had been just giving them away, and Jenna had taken a few. They were thin with white covers and a circle on the front. Most times the circle had a picture of a man and a woman on it. So far, the book she was reading was interesting. It was a romance. It even said so right there on the cover. So she had hidden them under her bed so Mom wouldn't find them. She had 5 in all, and she was planning on reading every one of them. She didn't know some of the words, but what she hadn't known, she had skipped over, and everything still made sense. Even there had been and there had been kissing. The writer talked about swooping lips and plunging stomachs, butterflies and nervous feelings, shaking hands and being filled with an outside warmth on the inside. She had felt all those things when Buddy kissed her. Did that mean she and Buddy were having a romance? The thought was exciting. She had never had a romance before, and for the first time in her life, she wanted it. She wanted it more than she had wanted anything else ever. Jenna tucked the book under her leg and let her skirt fall down to conceal it. Where are we going? Town. town. Mommy shook the tractor keys. We are going to the fabric store. I want to get some new fabric. Then maybe we'll go to the bakery and get a cupcake or something. Sound good? It sounded more than good. It sounded like something straight out of heaven. She shoved the book under her pillow and stood. She hoped Mommy hadn't noticed her hiding the romance novel. She wouldn't want Mom to take it away before she got to find out if the man and woman ever got married. She might lose her mind if she didn't know how it ended. Yeah, it was that good. What about Mom? She asked, smoothing her palms down her twirling apron. There was a little tear at the bottom, but she didn't think anyone would notice, and she didn't want to change. It seemed like such a waste of time and energy, especially to change just because it wasn't the right apron to wear to town. If Mom had seen it, she would have made her change anyway, and would have put the apron away until she had time to mend it. But it wasn't Mom standing there waiting for her to get ready, but Mommy. Mommy would rarely worry. Mommy who rarely worried about anything. Mommy who seemed to take her side when Mom got a little too wound up. Maybe that was why Mommy was taking this trip into town. Maybe she needed a break from her mom as much as Jenna herself. She said a quick prayer as she rushed over to the mirror and checked her prayer cap. She shouldn't think such uncharitable thoughts about her own mother, but sometimes the thought was there before she could even think about not thinking about it. Your mom is staying here, Mommy said. It'll just be the two of us. Is that okay? Jenna couldn't stop her smile of joy and relief. That sounds perfect. Then change your apron and we'll go. What's your favorite? Mommy asked as they browsed through the fabric shop. It was across Main Street from the Kaufman family restaurant. But a person could barely see one if standing in front of the other. A huge tree grew between the stores in the park that ran through the middle of the town. It was an elm, or maybe an oak. She wasn't sure. She didn't know that much about trees, and did it matter what kind of tree it was? Not really. No matter what kind of tree was there, it still blocked the view. This one. Jenna ran her fingers over the most beautiful shade of purple she had ever seen. She loved purple. It was and had always been her favorite color, and this shade was more beautiful than most, dark enough to look mature, but not so dark that a body couldn't tell that it was purple. Mommy laughed. Of course. She knew as well as Mom, that Jenna loved the color purple. She pulled the bolt of fabric from the wall and balanced it against her shoulder. What are you doing? Jenna asked. I think it's time for a new dress. Mommy smiled. You and Mom are getting one too? Jenna asked. That was how they usually did. That was how they usually did things. Mom picked out the color, and Mommy made them all 3 dresses from the same fabric. That Jenna got to choose this time made it even more special. Not this time, Mommy said. This one will be just for you. Really? Mommy nodded, gathering up the matching thread and the necessary snaps, then took everything to the counter. Jenna was going to have a beautiful dress in the most beautiful color and all for herself. Why did that seem so special? She wasn't sure, and as strange as it sounded, Mommy's decision made Jenna feel grown up. It wasn't anything she could have ever guessed. It wasn't anything she could have guessed would happen. Mommy paid for the supplies, and together they left the shop and walked down Main Street. Would you rather have a piece of pie from Kaufman's or a cookie from Esther's Bakery? Mommy asked. Jenna stopped. Pie or a cookie? Both were fantastic. She loved pie from Kaufman's. It was as good as the pie they had at the restaurant back in Yoder. But even more fun. Cora Ann Kaufman was known for loving to cook and trying her own new recipes. Everyone said she took after her father, but he had died before Jenna and her family had moved to town. And Esther's Bakery, they had the best everything in town. Their pies rivaled those at Kaufman's, and people came from all over for their cookies and cakes. Plus, Jenna loved to visit with Caroline and Esther. She especially loved when Caroline had one of her little ones with her. Emma was the oldest, then Holly, who was a boy, and baby Grace. Baby Grace was just over a year old now, but Jenna had heard the ladies talking at the quilting circle, and even after the church service, saying that baby Grace had been hard on Caroline. Jenna wasn't completely sure what that meant, but she supposed that Caroline had been unwell. Whatever it was, Caroline looked healed to Jenna. More than healed. Caroline was one of the most beautiful women Jenna had ever seen. Blonde hair, hazel eyes, and a happiness that she wore around her like a cloak. It was the same happiness Jenna could see on her husband and children as well. They were a great family and blessed to have each other. Jenna had Jenna had also heard people talk about God's plan when talking about Caroline and Andrew. They didn't see they didn't say much more than that, but Jenna had pieced together from other conversations that Caroline had been married and widowed, and Andrew had lost the love of his life before moving to Wells Landing. Unlike Jenna's family, who came from Kansas, Andrew had moved to Oklahoma from Missouri. Well, Mommy asked. Well, Mommy asked. Cookies, she answered with a decisive nod. Pie was good, but Esther kept a microwave out for customer use. Nothing beats melty chocolate chip cookies. Let's go. Mommy led the way up Main Street until they could cross over to the park. It was strange to Jenna that there was a park right in the middle of town. It was long and narrow, but shone like a jewel. The grass was pretty and green. There were a couple of big trees on both ends, and Jenna wondered if the town decorated them at Christmas time. She loved Christmas lights, though she knew better than to say as much to Mom. Her mother felt the flashy English way of celebrating Christmas did not serve Jesus. Jenna just thought they were pretty. That was all. But Mom didn't understand how she would love the lights and Jesus at the same time. It was Saturday, early afternoon, and the weather was fine. The sun was shining, the wind barely blowing. The temperature promised summer was on the way. But it wasn't too hot yet. May was just perfect that way. Jenna and Mommy made their way across the park, past where the other people played with their children, ate a snack at the picnic tables scattered throughout, or allowed their children to play on the many pieces of equipment, the swings, the seesaw, the sandbox. They had to wait to cross the street on the other side. 2 cars and a tractor chugged by before they could get to the opposite sidewalk. Everything about the day seemed special as they walked into the bakery. It smelled like every bakery she had ever been in. Yeast and sugar blended together by the heat from the ovens. Jenna smiled when she spied Caroline behind the counter. She was drying her hands on a clean white towel. Hi, Jenna. Na- Jenna, Nadine. Caroline tossed the towel over one shoulder. Are you having a good Saturday? Yeah. Yeah. Jenna bounded. Jenna bounded toward the counter, excited to see the young woman. Mommy brought me. Mommy bought me some. Mommy bought me some material to make a new dress. It's purple. Mommy chuckled and shook her head. It's her favorite color. Caroline turned to Jenna. Have you met James Real? She asked. Emily's father-in-law? He loves purple too. Is he Lavender's father? Mommy asked. Caroline gave a playful eye roll as she nodded. That's him. Great man, she said. The purple is more than a color to him. Jenna remembered. He was the one at church who wore a light purple shirt under his vest instead of the traditional white. At first, she was a little shocked that he was allowed to do that, but then she kind of liked it. Probably because she liked purple as much as he did. Then she had overheard some of the ladies talking to Mom and Mommy. They told them about James, how he had been kicked in the head by a Canton, cantankerous milk cow, and had almost died. To Jenna, it sounded a little like her own accident, though she couldn't remember a time before then, even though she was 12 when she had drowned and almost died. It was as if her mind shut down most of her memories before that. She remembered times and things, just not how it felt to be without a weakened brain. I'm going to make this dress for Jenna to wear to next week's service. James will love that, Caroline told them. What would you ladies like? I'll have a coffee, Mommy said, and Jenna will have a chocolate chip cookie and a glass of milk. Be right up, Caroline said. She turned away to fill their order, and Mommy looked to Jenna. Would you rather have a milk or a coffee? Jenna wrinkled her nose. Mom doesn't like for me to drink coffee. I know, but you're growing up, and I think you should be allowed a few more liberties. Jenna shook her head, though the thought was thrilling and maybe a bit forbidden. It was enough to know that Mommy thought she was old enough for coffee. She didn't actually have to drink it. Maybe next time. Caroline buzzed around behind the counter, getting their order ready while they found a place to sit. I forgot to get the elastic for your mom, Mommy said. Do you want me to go get it? Jenna offered. Mommy shook her head. Like most of the older women in Wells Landing, she had taken to trying her prayer cap strings since moving to Oklahoma. Women in Yoder left theirs untied. She had taken to tying her prayer cap strings since moving to Oklahoma. Women in Yoder left theirs untied, no matter their age. Jenna wasn't quite used to the look yet. You stay here and enjoy your cookie, Mommy said. I'll be right back. Jenna slid back into the booth bench and watched as Mommy headed out. Jenna loved coming to the bakery. It reminded her of one of the stores back home. It wasn't a bakery itself, but it had places to sit and enjoy the food, each other's company, and even the town as it went by. I thought you were going home early. Jenna turned as Esther Fitch bustled into the store. Esther was the bakery's owner, a plump woman with sparkling eyes and rosy cheeks. If Jenna had to use one word to describe Esther, she would say, Mary. I was going to, but Jody couldn't come in. Caroline planted one hand at the base of her spine and stretched. Then she picked up the tray holding their order and carried it to their table. Esther shook her head. Get on now. I'm here. Esther shooed Caroline away. For the first time, Jenna noticed the dark circles under Caroline's eyes. She wasn't a new mother, but Jenna had babysat enough to know that Caroline had the look of an overtired parent. Caroline untied her apron and half weighted it into a roll. And why don't you take tomorrow off? It wasn't quite a request. I'm fine. Jenna knew it was rude to listen in on their conversation, but she was so tuned in to listening to others speak that she couldn't help herself. She stood and made her way to the counter where the microwave sat. A couple of seconds and her cookie would be chewy, melty goodness. You may be fine, Esther said, but we don't want a repeat of Gracie. Caroline patted Esther's plump cheek. Jenna ducked her head and pretended not to be listening. You're too good to me. The feeling is mutual. Now get on home and rest yourself and that baby. I'll get Jody to cover for you tomorrow. The microwave dinged. Jenna recovered her cookie and went back to her seat. The words spoken between Caroline and Esther stayed with her. There was something about to them, something special, something that she was missing, and if she had a few moments, she might be able to figure out what it was. But the bell above the door rang. Instinctively, she turned to see who had come in. One look and she shifted, shifted in her seat, and otherwise tried to act normal. Jenna? She looked over as he called her name. Buddy? She asked. He broke away from his mom and approached the table while his mother frowned at the both of them. I didn't know you liked to come into the bakery on Saturday afternoons. I like to come to the bakery any time I can, she replied. Was that a dumb thing to say? She thought it sounded dumb, but it was already out, and she couldn't take it back now. He grinned and jerked a thumb back toward himself. Me too. His mother cast her a disapproving look, then made her way to the counter where Esther waited. I'm sorry I haven't been able to come over, Buddy said. I wanted to, but Mom doesn't like for me to drive the tractor by myself. You did that the other day, she pointed out. He nodded. And Mom was mad. I got grounded. She supposed she might have been too, if Mom knew that a boy had been over while Jenna had been home alone. I understand. I'm just glad I got to see you today, and I enjoyed seeing you on Tuesday. Me too. Mommy and I came to town to buy material for a new dress. We came to get some bread for tonight and a peanut butter pie. He made a face. You don't like peanut butter pie? You don't like peanut butter pie? Jen asked. He shrugged. I like cake. Chocolate cake with peppermint frosting. Peanut butter pie is good, I guess. But Mom gets one whenever Jonah and Sarah and the baby come over to eat. We can only get a chocolate cake with peppermint frosting on at Christmas time. She supposed that meant the three of them were scheduled to come to supper that evening, but she didn't have time to ask before his mother, Gertie, tugged on his elbow. Time to go. Say goodbye, Buddy. He looked back to Jenna and grinned. Goodbye, Buddy. And Jenna returned his smile and gave a little wave as he sauntered out the door behind his mom. He was so cute and funny and sweet, and she couldn't imagine only getting to see him on Sundays after church. There might be the chance encounter in town. After all, Bull's Landing wasn't that big, but she wanted to see him often, every day, more than every day. Was there more than every day? As much as possible, for sure, but neither one of them seemed to have that much control over their lives. His mother kept him close, wouldn't allow him to drive the tractor by himself. Her mother didn't want them to see each other. She didn't even want Jenna to drink coffee. How were they supposed to form any sort of relationship when she couldn't even decide when and where she she got to drink coffee. They weren't. That was the truth in it all. They weren't supposed to have any sort of relationship because their folks thought they weren't ready. That they would never be ready. How could she grow up if no one would let her? She wanted more than the life she had now. She wasn't sure exactly what it was she wanted, just more. She watched Buddy walk out with his mom. He left without his chocolate cake. Suddenly, she wanted to make the cake for him. If it was his favorite, he should be able to have it all year long. Esther's had Christmas cookies all year. Why not chocolate cake? But more than that, she heard the bell behind her chime as she approached the counter. Her grandmother was back, but Jenna was not to be deterred. "Esther," she called, then smiled as the woman turned around. "I changed my mind. I want coffee after all." He got to see her today. He had been wondering when he might see her again, and see her again next. In all his figuring, the only time that was certain was next Sunday at church. Tomorrow was the off Sunday, and he hadn't heard any talk about visiting or having visitors, so he supposed they were spending a quiet day at home. What did he expect? His mom was mighty upset with him over taking the tractor. Jonah's words came back to him. Mom didn't think he had the brain power to keep himself from getting hurt. How could she not see that he did? He checked the mail all the time these days. He had for years. He could plow a field using the same tractor everyone else in his family used. He could take care of the animals, heat up soup, and wash a load of clothes if he had to. He only knew his last one. He only knew this last one because he had gotten red drink all over his new white church shirt after Mom had told him he couldn't have any of the red drink, and that he should change his clothes. He had done neither, and so that was the day Hannah had shown him how to wash a load of clothes. See? He knew a lot of things. But him knowing it and Mom knowing it were two different things. Tuesday was the quilting circle meeting again. With any luck, Jenna would stay home and he could come visit. He wished he could get word to her that he had a plan, but he wasn't sure how he would be able to do that. And he had other things to worry about. He had 3 days to convince his mom that he had enough brain power to be able to go to Jenna's house by himself and take the tractor. He just wished he had a plan for that as well. Chapter 8. you doing? Mom came into the kitchen on Monday. Mom came into the kitchen on Monday morning, still wiping sleep from her eyes. Or maybe she was rubbing them in disbelief. It was hard to tell with all the smoke in the room between them. Making breakfast, he grinned at her over one shoulder, then turned his attention back to the bacon in the pan. The batch was coming out better than the first pan, though it was still speckling with little bits of black that he figured was from the first attempt at frying. It had only taken one pan of bacon to figure out that he had the heat up too high. The coffee was ready, but it was a little strong. He had tried adding water, but it hadn't helped. Now he just had to figure out how to make the biscuits and fry the eggs. Why? Mom asked, waving a hand in front of her face as she came closer. I wanted to do something for you. Mom nodded. She smiled, then her lips pressed together as she picked up a piece of the first batch of bacon. It was as black as the pan he fried it in, but he had tasted it, and it wasn't so bad. It could be eaten. How do I make biscuits? He asked, flipping the bacon. This was a goldeny brown color and looked more like what Mom served every morning, even with the little flecks of black on them. Those sort of looked like pepper. Mom shook her head. Biscuits have to be started first. They'll never be done in time now. Everything else will be cold. Oh. Buddy's mood fell a notch, but he could still make this right. Toast? She nodded. Get the bread and the cookie sheet. He moved to do as she said, and as soon as he was out of the way, she stepped up to the stove. No. He moved back in front, blocking her from touching the frying pan. I'm cooking breakfast. Smells like you're cooking more than food. Smells like you're cooking more than food. Prudy came into the room, her sass and spunk already in place. Buddy, Mom pulled him away from the stove and spun him around. What? He tried to see his back, but it was impossible. He knew that before he tried, but he tried anyway. She swatted at a spot at his waist. What's going on? Aaron was awake, standing in the doorway to the kitchen. Behind him stood Jonathan. Buddy's on fire, Prudy happily chirped. What? Buddy jumped and turned in a circle. Where? It's out now, with the bacon. Prudy pointed to the stove. The pan of bacon was smoking, adding more smoke to to that already floating in the kitchen. Buddy, Mom snatched up a pot holder and moved the bacon onto the back of the stove, away from the heat. She deftly flipped off the gas and turned back to Buddy. I think your cooking time has come to an end. But she shook her head. Prudy giggled behind her hand, but Buddy wasn't going to let that make him angry. He had tried, and that was more than anyone else in the room could say, not counting Mom, of course. She cooked every day. I just wanted to, Buddy. Mom patted him on the cheek, while Jonathan and Aaron patted away. Prudy climbed up into one of the chairs and propped her elbow on the tabletop, her chin in her hand. Thank you for your effort. Go on and get dressed. I'll make some oatmeal. I am dressed, he said. You burned the back of your shirt. You burned the back of your shirt, Prudy informed him. I did? Once again he tried to see behind him, even though he knew he couldn't. Yeah, Mom nodded. Go change your shirt. We can talk about this after we eat. Talk about it? Talk about it? That sounded like more trouble. He didn't want trouble. He was trying to show her how much of a grown-up he was. Instead, he had burned up a whole package of bacon and cooked a hole in his shirt. Yeah, Mom, he mumbled, then turned to go. He no sooner got to the door than Prudy chirped from behind him. You might want to change your trousers, too. You melted those. No one said a word about his early morning kitchen disaster as they ate their oatmeal and toast. Half an hour later, Prudy squirmed in her seat as if she had more than she could deal with, and Buddy figured Mom had wanted her not to say anything, lest she herself be in trouble. That was a first. That was a first. Seeing as how Prudy pretty much got to do everything she wanted. Dad didn't say anything either. He was in the barn when Buddy had tried his hand at cooking, so Buddy figured Mom had told him what had happened. So aside from the silent breakfast, everyone kept giving him looks as they all ate without a word. He had tried, he told himself, he had tried to do something that none of them did, and he would not be sorry or embarrassed, no matter how many times they looked at him, then let their gazes drift away like they hadn't been looking at all. Prudy, Dad said, after the after-meal prayer, you can start the dishes. But Dad shot her a look that stopped her mid-sentence. Yeah, Dad. In here, Buddy. Dad pointed toward the living room. What would what could he do but obey? Mom followed him. Mom followed behind him, and then Dad behind her. Buddy settled on the couch. Buddy settled down on the couch and waited for them to sit down as well. He should have known that he was going to be in trouble. Aside from the bacon, he had ruined his shirt, his fabric suspenders, and his trousers, and all because he wanted to show them how grown up he was. He had done the exact opposite. At the rate he was going, he would never be able to drive. He would never be able to drive to Jenna's house on his own, and he would never be able to show her mom how deserving he and Jenna were of being able to date. Never, ever, never. "What's going on with you?" Dad asked. Buddy looked to his father and tried to find the words for what he needed to say. "I like a girl." Those weren't exactly what he had thought he would be. What he had thought would be best, but he had said them anyway. "I told you." Mom poked Dad in the side. He smacked her hand away without looking and continued to stare at Buddy. "You like a girl." It wasn't quite a question. Jenna Burkhart. The new girl. His mom's words were spoken to his dad. Again, Dad didn't turn, just kept staring at Buddy. "Is she why you thought it would be a good idea to cook breakfast?" Dad asked. Buddy nodded. "I wanted to show you that I'm grown up. I want to see her, and I have to prove that I can handle it." Dad frowned, and Buddy had a feeling he was only making sense to himself. "You wanted to show us that you can handle having a girlfriend." "Yeah." Once he said the word, his mom and Dad shared a look. Buddy had no idea what it meant, but he wasn't sure he liked it. "Buddy," Dad started, "is Jenna Burkhart the girl who was injured in a car accident or something?" His voice was gentle and for some reason rubbed against Buddy's nerves. That was the saying he had it written in his notebook, though he couldn't remember exactly who explained it to him. He did remember that it meant that something was really bothering him, and it was the best way he had to describe his father's tone of voice and vague expression. "Or something," Buddy answered. He did his best to keep his tone down, but it was creeping upwards. "I think it was a swimming accident," Mom said. "Whatever it is," Dad said, "she's..." He searched for a word. "Don't say special," Buddy said. His voice held a hard edge, but either his dad didn't notice or wasn't ready to address it. How would you have me describe her?" "You can say she's beautiful," Buddy said. His hands twisting in his lap. How had this conversation gotten here? "She's sweet and honest, and one of the nicest people I've ever met." Dad nodded. "Yeah," he said. "Okay, but she's nuts." Dad didn't. Dad did it. Dad did his search again, but Buddy didn't want to hear it. He slammed his hands over his ears to block out his father's words, but it was his mother who spoke. Normal, Mom said. She's not normal. Buddy stood, dropped his hands from his ears. That wasn't helping blocking out the words he didn't want to hear. Instead, he curled his fingers into fists and did his very best to control his build-up emotions. What is normal? He said. I'm not normal. Saying the words was unexpectedly freeing. He felt lighter than he had in a long time. I'm not normal. I'm not normal. He had been spending his entire life trying to be like everyone else. He was proud that he had gone to school with all the other kids. It might have taken him a little more time to finish, but he hadn't gone to a special school. He was always working towards being like everyone else. He hadn't realized it until now. He didn't want to be like everyone else. He wanted to be like him. And I don't want to be normal. Sit down, buddy. He plopped back into his seat out of habit. His mother told him to do something and he did. He always did. I'm only sitting down because I want to, he said, daring either one of them to say differently. They didn't. Good. I'm not normal, he said once more, just for good measure. It's okay not to be normal, buddy, Dad said. And it's okay that Jenna is not normal either, Mom continued. But it's not okay if two people like the two of you think that they can have everything everyone else has. Buddy frowned. He wasn't sure he followed all of that. But to say so would have proved their point. He was sure. So he said nothing. We've talked to Jenna's mother, and she agrees with us, Mom said. Buddy sat up a little straighter. Agrees with you about what? Mom reached out and squeezed his hand. It was the first clue that he wasn't going to like what was coming next. We don't think you and Jenna should get too close. He was on his feet in an instant. I want to get close to her. Didn't they understand? Sit down, buddy. This time, from Dad. But he wasn't budging. Instead, he crossed his arms and widened his stance. I will not. His father blinked once, and for a split second, Buddy thought he had been the biggest. He had made the biggest mistake of his life. Then a look of peace overtook his father's expression. Okay then, stand up, but hear us out. They were sitting on either side of him, so if he was going to storm from the room, it would have to be over and across the coffee table. He wasn't sure if he was ready for a scene like that. Plus, he didn't think he could step all the way over That meant stepping on the coffee table, since Mom didn't like them to put their feet on top of it. He was pretty certain she wouldn't want him to walk across it either. So for now, he would stay where he was. Talk, he finally said. I know that you think you have feelings for her, Mom started. But it's because she's the only person other than Daniel Kaufman and James Reel that you've ever met who's like you. I know. That's why I want to be with her. Because you're alike? Mom asked. Buddy nodded. That's why you can't be together. Buddy shook his head. That doesn't make any sense. He sank back into his seat and tried to sort through it all. The two of you, his mother started. Then she looked at his dad. It's not safe for the two of you. It's not safe for the two of you to be together. Not safe? Buddy asked. That's right, Dad said. You think about it and you'll see what we're saying is true. He didn't know how he would ever agree, but he had to listen for now. This morning's bacon incident hadn't helped any, but he wasn't giving up. He couldn't. Do you understand? Mom asked. Buddy nodded and stood, though he didn't understand at all, but he would pretend to until he could find out what he had to do to prove to his parents that he and Jenna more than belonged together. They were all part of God's plan. Jenna smoothed a hand over the skirt of her new dress and looked across the room, hoping to catch Buddy's gaze. Instead, she caught that of his dad. She looked away. It had been a week since she had seen him at the bakery. She would hoped that he would drop by sometime during the week, but he hadn't. Unless he came by on Tuesday evening, expecting her to be there, and her mom and mommy gone to quilting circle, but they had instead insisted that she go too, and she couldn't refuse without raising their suspicions. Now they were back to church Sunday, and she could feel that something had changed. She wasn't sure what it was. Had Buddy decided that he didn't like her anymore? Or maybe she had imagined his affection. She thought about their game of Candyland and holding hands and their kiss. No, she decided. It wasn't that he didn't like her. Something else had happened. And she was going to have to wait until after the church meal before she would be able to talk to him and find out what it was. That seemed like an eternity. They had a prayer and preaching. Then they sang. Then more preaching, more singing, and more prayers. Until finally she was serving lemonade to the men. Can I have a cup of that? Buddy? Buddy. Her voice was like a whisper. She had been waiting so long to talk to him that that now that the opportunity was there, she wasn't sure what she should say. Hi. He lifted his empty cup. Oh, she said, and poured some lemonade for him. Sorry. I like your dress, he said. She blushed at the compliment. Thank you. It's new. I know. His gaze met hers, and she felt like she might be able to fall into his honey-colored eyes. I've been wanting to come talk to you, he said. Her heart felt suddenly light once again. He had wanted to see her. I've been wanting you to come too. He smiled, and she was certain it was the best sight she had ever seen. My mom and dad, he started. He didn't need to finish. She could figure it out from there. Her brain might be weak, but she wasn't completely stupid. That's okay. Do you think you could meet me this week? He asked. Where? She asked. I don't know. How am I going to get there? Her mommy might take her to meet Buddy, but she was pretty sure her mother wouldn't agree. I don't know that either. How were they ever going to work this out? Can you call me? She asked. She said the words as quietly as possible. There was a line forming behind him, and the fewer people who knew what they were talking about, the better. At the phone shanty? He asked. She nodded. Okay. He held his paper cup out for a refill. Then once he had more, he moved away. Jenna filled the next person in line's cup, but her mind was on a blonde-haired boy who was going to call her, and the thrill she felt all the way to her toes. I'm going for a walk, Jenna called on Monday afternoon. Mom poked her head out of the kitchen, her brow wrinkled. Again? Jenna nodded. It's such a nice day. Nice enough to walk down to the phone shanty for a fourth time to see if Buddy... It's such a nice day. Nice enough to walk down to the phone shanty for a fourth time to see if Buddy had called about them meeting. She had thought of nothing else since she had seen him the day before. Now all she wanted to do was see him again. Somehow, she would find a way to make her mom understand that she and Buddy were meant to be together. The phone shanty was not far from their house, close enough that it was still on their property and on the same side of the road as the house. Hopefully Mom wouldn't find any problem with her walking there. But just in case she wasn't telling Mom where she was going. The phone shanty looked just the same as it had the last 3 times she had been there that morning. But that didn't mean there wouldn't be a message. Fourth time was a charm. Okay, so she knew people always said third, but that didn't seem any more reasonable than 4. So she changed it to fit her needs. The inside was a little dusty, and there was surely more spiders than she wanted to think about, but she picked up the phone and dialed the number for the voicemail messages. One One was for their neighbor. Jenna was careful to write it down on the notepad next to the little bench seat in the shanty. The second message was also for their neighbor, and again she neatly wrote the message down on the notepad, and the third one was from Buddy. Hi Jenna, I hope you get this message. I'm coming to see you Tuesday afternoon. I think that's the best time. I'll explain when I get there. Just make sure you're home. See you there. She listened to it one more time before she erased it and headed out of the shanty. She was going to get to see Buddy again. Maybe the fourth time really was a charm. Jenna made her way back to her house and wondered what she would wear tomorrow. Her dark turquoise colored dress. It was the exact color of the ocean in a travel poster she had seen once in Yoder. She had never been to the ocean and couldn't imagine that it was really that marvelous color. But one day she hoped to see it and know for herself. Purple, of course, was her favorite. But Mommy always told her that the deep, rich blue of the ocean colored dress made her eyes seem an impossible color. Secretly, she couldn't imagine that her eyes looked any different in one dress than they did another. But the dress itself was one of her favorites. Her mommy had sewn little whale-shaped buttons at the top of the short sleeves. It wasn't that Jenna liked whales more than any other animal or fish, but they had matched the material, and Jenna liked the idea of having whales going around with her all day. She had read at the library that some whales were even larger than most houses, but she couldn't imagine. All she knew was she liked the buttons, and she liked the dress, and she would wear it tomorrow when Buddy came over. Now all she had to do was convince Mom to leave her at home when they headed off for the quilting circle meeting. Chapter 9. You don't feel warm. Mom held one hand to Jenna's forehead. I didn't say I was warm. I said my head hurt. Mom shook her head and Jenna adjusted the covers up to her chin. Maybe we all should stay home tonight. No. Jenna rose half out of bed and lay back down quickly and made sure she was completely covered once again. She was supposed to be resting, not lounging around in one of her best dresses while she waited for her mom and mommy to leave for the quilting circle meeting. But I would feel bad if we left you here all by yourself and went to the quilting frolic. And I would feel even worse if you stayed home because of me, or if you found out what was truly happening this afternoon. And I would feel even worse if you stayed home because of me, or if you found out what was truly happening this afternoon. She did her best to make her expression look normal, but how did a person look when their head hurt? She wasn't sure, so she squinted and wrinkled her forehead for added effect. Mom stood, but with a frown of her own. Times like these, I wish we had a cell phone. Jenna's eyes widened, and she pulled herself up a bit in the bed, but just a bit. She wouldn't want her mom to see what she was wearing. Next time she would have to remember and change after they left for the meeting. Next time was there going to be a next time? She had no idea. A cell phone is against Ordnung. Mom gave a small shrug. Yes and no. What does that mean? Jen asked. Sometimes it is better to ask for forgiveness than beg for permission. Oh. Jenna lay back down. Please go on to the meeting. Tell everyone that I'm sorry I couldn't be there, and I'll do my best to come to the next one. And she would have to She was sure missing too many meetings might make Mom suspicious. If you're certain, Mom sighed. It's just a headache, Jenna assured her. Probably from all those cakes you've been baking. Mom tisked. Too much sugar. Maybe, Jenna said. She closed her eyes and acted like she was really and truly resting. I won't eat any while you're gone. I should hope not. Mom's voice shifted, and Jenna could tell that she had moved toward the door. Be safe, Jenna said. She did her best to make her voice sound sleepy. Say broth. Say broth, Mom said. Behave yourself. I will. Jenna snuggled down into the covers a little deeper and scrunched her eyes closed. It was an outright lie, and it pained her, even though she knew that she wouldn't be able to see Buddy without deceiving her mom and her mommy. It was a hard fact to accept. She stayed in bed, covered up, eyes closed tight as she waited for the telltale sounds that they had left. The slam of the screen door, the tractor engine, the chug of the motor fading away as they drove from the farm. She stayed that way a while longer, counted to 100 as slowly as she could, and hoped that it was slow enough. 90, 99, 100. She threw back the covers and rushed to the window. The tractor was gone, taking Mom and Mommy with it. Usually one of them felt guilty and stayed behind. She crossed her fingers that they were both gone, and tiptoed down the stairs. She listened for any giveaway noises that one of them stayed behind, but there were no shuffles or footsteps, no clank of dishes or splash of running water. "Hello?" she called from the stairs. She was crouched over, trying to peer into the room below without actually setting foot in it. She called again and listened. No one answered in return. It had worked. Jenna straightened and swept into the living room. It worked! It worked! It worked! She twirled around in a circle. It had worked, but now she had a few things to do before Buddy showed up. She raced into the kitchen, pulled down her mom's cookbook, and grabbed the shortening from the cabinet. She wasn't sure when Buddy would emerge. She wasn't sure when Buddy would manage to get away from his folks, and she wanted to have everything ready for him when he did. The cupcakes were on the cooling rack. She asked for Mommy's help in making them yesterday, but they had run out of time and hadn't been able to add the frosting. It was probably for the best. Mommy would have wanted to add chocolate buttercream frosting to the sweet moist cupcakes. Normally Jenna would have liked that too, but these weren't for Jenna. Even if Mommy didn't know. These were for Buddy Ivandale Miller, and they were going to have peppermint frosting on top, his favorite, just like the ones that Esther made at her bakery. She turned to the page where it showed how to make icing for cakes. She had done this a couple of times before, but never by herself. But she knew she could do it. Mom didn't give her enough credit. She could do a lot of things that no one thought she could, and that was the saddest part of all. Ralph? Her mother's words came back to her. She was trying to behave, but what was a girl supposed to do if she had found someone she wanted to spend time with and no one thought they should be together? But Mom had said something else. Sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than beg for permission. If that meant what she thought it did, then her mom was saying that sometimes a person had to break a few rules, even though they knew it was wrong. If there was something big at stake, she had added that last part herself, because this was big. Her and Buddy, they wanted to be together. They might even be able to fall in love, and that was really big, and big was important. That meant she had to do what she had to do in order to make it work. At least that's what she thought it meant. She measured out the powdered sugar and dumped it in a bowl. She felt the container. She left the container on the counter where she could get it later if she needed more. She had watched Mommy make icing her entire life, and she always needed more powdered sugar than what the recipe called for. She wasn't sure. Uh, she wasn't sure why that was, only that it was a fact of life. 1 teaspoon of peppermint extract didn't seem like enough, so she added another teaspoon and another dash more of for good measure. A little bit more milk, and she began to stir the concoction. It was tough at first, as she had known it wouldn't be. She added a little more milk, then wiped her eyes on her apron. They were stinging a bit, maybe from lying about having a headache. Stirring the mixture was really hard, so she added a bit more milk, but one look told her that was too much. She added more powdered sugar, maybe too much of that, since what should be smooth and creamy frosting was stiff and hard. A little more milk, a cup or so powdered sugar, and another liberal dash of peppermint extract. She wouldn't want her effort to taste like plain old white frosting, since she had cut the amount of extract by adding more powdered sugar. She tried stirring again, but this time it was a little runny. She added more powdered sugar and more extract, but it was too much. More milk went in, and the repetitions continued until her bowl was brimming with the mixture, and the powdered sugar container was almost empty. It was hard stirring, but she was still worried that peppermint flavoring. She was still worried about the peppermint flavoring, so she poured the rest of the bottle in for good measure. She hoped it was enough. She had never made peppermint icing before. Her eyes watered a bit from the smell, but she supposed that's what happened when a person baked with peppermint. Kind of like when a person cooked with raw onions. Was that a tractor she heard outside? She stopped and listened, but couldn't tell if it turned down her drive or continued on. She stirred faster, even if she only got a couple of the cupcakes done by the time he arrived. She would still be able to give him those, and she could finish up the rest of them tomorrow. She concentrated on stirring just a portion of the icing. If she was going to worry about the bulk of it the next day, she only needed part of it this afternoon. She stirred as fast as her arms would allow her. Her hand was a blur as she mixed. The tractor engine was gone now, because it had moved down the road out of earshot, or because it had been turned off in front of her house. She didn't know. She grabbed one of the cupcakes and smeared the top of it with the frosting, but something happened. The cake crumbled and mixed and mixed with the snow-white icing. Dang, Jenna said, then covered her mouth with one hand. What would Mom say? Or what would Mom say about such language? That she had been going to too many singings and shouldn't be exposed to the bad influence of the younger people. She better make sure she never said that in front of her mother, but for now she was safe. She did her best to hide the dark brown specks in the pristine white frosting, but everything she did just made it worse. She gave up on the first one and started a second. It was going a lot better, and it was going a lot better than the first, until a knock sounded on the door. She jumped and dug her butter knife into the top of the cupcake, spearing through the cake and tearing it. Chocolate crumbs once again stained her peppermint concoction. Dang, she whispered. The knock on the door sounded once again. Jenna? Jenna? A muffled voice called. Buddy! Just a minute. She grabbed a third cupcake, but her hands were shaking, and it ended up being the biggest mess of all. It's the thought that counts. Wasn't that what everyone always said? Jenna looked from the mess that was supposed to be beautiful Christmas time cupcakes, even though it was May, to the powdered sugar thrown all over the counter, the smudge of shortening on the back of the sugar container, the overturned empty bottle of peppermint extract. Everything about the cakes was a mess, from the kitchen where she had made them to the actual desserts, and she had no one to blame but herself. It's the thought that counts, she muttered as she took off her cooking apron. Below it she was wearing a white apron that thankfully had been spared from her shower of sugar. She dusted off her deep blue dress as she made her way to the door. She wrenched it open to find Buddy on the other side, hand raised to knock once more. The second he saw her, his face lit up, and he smiled. Oh, how she loved his smile. She moved to one side and motioned him into the house. Come in. He started forward, then hesitated. Are you sure it's okay? I mean, your mom and mommy aren't home. Are they going to be okay with you having a guest? He shook his head. What am I saying? Of course they aren't. I should go. He turned to make his way back to the tractor. Jenna started after him. Buddy, wait. But he didn't stop. This was a mistake. It's not, she cried. It's not, she cried as she followed after him. She had been so happy to see him, even if she had used bad language and made a mess of her gift to him. She was still so very happy that He was there with her. I'm sorry, Jenna. Still, he didn't turn around, just kept walking. She followed behind him, stumbled a bit as tears filled her eyes. You can't go. It's not a mistake. It's all part of God's plan. Please, buddy. He stopped, and for a moment, she thought he might set his feet into motion once again. Instead, he turned slowly to face her. What did you say? Please, buddy. Before that, he said. You can't go, she repeated. He shook his head. It's not a mistake? No. She ran over the words in her mind. It's not a mistake. I said it's all part of God's plan. The tension in his shoulders melted away like the snow under the bright southern sun. You mean that? She had said a lot of things she hadn't meant lately, a lot of things that were wholly untrue. But not this. Yeah, with all my heart. All your heart? She nodded. What about your mom? He asked. My mom? I don't know, she answered truthfully. But I'm not willing to give up. Are you? I think you are the best thing that could have ever happened here. I'm so glad we met, and I'm so glad you're my friend. I never want to lose you. His words were so sweet and pure that she couldn't help herself. She launched herself at him. She threw her arm around him and held him close. She loved the feel of him close to her, warm and solid. He would protect her. She knew that with all her heart. Now they just had to convince their moms that they should be together, and that she was certain would require a little bit of skill, a dash or two of luck, and a whole lot of prayer. He had done it. He still couldn't quite believe he had actually done it. He had taken the tractor and left his house, not even bothering to leave a note, mainly because he should be back before anyone else got home and noticed that the tractor was missing. And until then, he got to spend all his time with Jenna. You got my message, he said as she led him toward the house. I did. It might be the best way for them to communicate, unless someone else using the shanty would up and tell on her for scheduling meetings with him. But until then, it was the best way they had. Buddy followed her up the steps and onto the porch, but stopped before setting foot in the house. What's wrong? He shook his head. I shouldn't go in there. Why not? I don't know. I just shouldn't. She tugged on his hand. Come on. He tried to pull away, but he loved her touch on his skin. Please, Jenna. It's not right. Nothing about this is right. He nodded. That's true. But some things, I can't explain it. Some things are just wrong. And going into my house is wrong? When you're the only one home, yeah. The look in his eyes was so pleading, so sincere that she couldn't help but agree. Will you sit on the porch with me? He nodded. I would like that. She motioned toward the swing. Go ahead and sit down. I have something for you. As Buddy sat down, Jenna hustled back into the house to get the cupcakes she had made for him. She had also put on a pot of coffee just to prove that she was old enough to drink it. 'Cause she was. She got out one of the wooden trays they used at holidays and loaded up the cupcakes and 2 cups of coffee. She added sugar to hers and left Buddy's plain. All the men she knew took their coffee black. That meant without anything in it. He smiled at her when she came back out onto the porch. She was sure he had the best smile she had ever seen. She set the tray on the table next to the swing and picked up one of the saucers containing a chocolate peppermint cupcake. She handed it to Buddy. What is it? He asked as he accepted the treat. He looked at it closer, his eyes wide. Is this what I think it is? I hope you like it. I will, he said with confidence. He peeled off the paper wrapper and took a big bite. 1 second it was in his mouth, and the other it was all over the wooden planks of the porch. Yuck, he cried, wiping his tongue with the paper. Ugh. Ugh. Jenna jumped back in surprise. What's wrong? It burns, Buddy cried, still rubbing his tongue with the cupcake paper. Jenna dug one finger into the icing and another into the icing of another cupcake and scooped up a bite. She popped it into her mouth and spit it out immediately. Hot, she cried. Buddy nodded. Jenna's eyes filled with tears. Her surprise was ruined. She had tried so hard to make him his favorite treat, but instead she had nearly blistered their tongues with too much peppermint. Don't cry, he said softly. But that just made the tears spill over her lashes. I'm not, she lied. How many lies had she told these last couple of weeks? But she couldn't admit she was crushed that Buddy didn't like her cupcakes. Not even that. The problem was that she wasn't able to make them for him. Not edible ones, at least. Jenna. More tears. She ducked her head where he couldn't see her face and tried to wipe them away with the back of one hand. Jenna, he said again. His arms came around her, and she laid her head against his shoulder. They were almost the same height, and her head fit perfectly into the crook by his neck. How wonderful and natural it felt to just rest against him. She hiccuped softly. I'm sorry the cupcakes taste awful. I wanted them to be a wonderful treat for you. Sweet Jenna. They are a treat because you made them for me. She pulled away so she could see his face. You mean that? He nodded. Of course I do. She simply looked at him for a moment. She stared into those honey-colored eyes of his, not looking for sincerity, but finding it all the same. What are we going to do about Mom? What are we going to do about Mom? My mom or your mom? He asked. Mine. Yours. Both of them. They don't want us to be together, and I want to be with you, always. He took her hand into his and squeezed his fingers. We'll think of something. Buddy led Jenna back to the swing, careful to step over the awful-tasting cupcake and icing splotch on the porch. He sat on the swing and pulled her down next to him. She snuggled in beside him. He put his arm around her shoulders, and she laid her head in the crook of his neck. We have to make them understand, Buddy said. Jenna nodded. But I messed up the icing. Mom will say I'm not ready for a boyfriend. I can't even make proper peppermint icing. Did you have a recipe for icing? He asked. Sort of. She twirled one of her cap strings around her finger. I just didn't know how much peppermint to put in. That's not proof of anything. But there was his mishap over breakfast the day before. I wanted to make breakfast for my family yesterday. I thought that if I could make food, then they would see how grown up I am, and how many I am, and how ready for the next part of my life. For the next part of my life. How did it turn out? The bacon was uneatable, and I burned up my clothes. She immediately sat up straight. She turned in her seat to face him. Are you okay? He nodded. But Mom, he ended his words with a sad shake of his head. They don't think I'm ready either. She settled back against him. He loved the feel of her slight weight and her warmth so close to him. We can show them, she said. We have to, he added. They had to, or they might not ever see each other again. But I don't think we should sneak around anymore. No? She shook her head. It doesn't feel right. He had to agree. He didn't want to hide what he felt for Jenna. He wanted it out there for the whole world to see. God had a plan for them. Everyone needed to know it. Yeah, he finally said. Okay, no more sneaking around. Everything we do, we show the world. Chapter 10. What happened to all the powdered sugar? Mom asked the following day. Jenna looked around the room as if suddenly a if suddenly a piece of furniture will give her the answer. No such luck. I spilled it. Mommy turned the empty container in her hands. All of it? Jenna nodded and turned away so her mother wouldn't be able to see her eyes. Look at her and see that she wasn't telling the truth. Again, yeah, she and Buddy had agreed to do everything they were doing out. She and Buddy had agreed to do everything they were doing out in the open, but that didn't mean they had to go back and explain what they had been doing. She had thought about it late into the night, and revealing all would surely bring them more trouble to add to their decision to face things head on. She might not like lying to her mom and mommy, but for now there was no way around it. How did you? Mom's words broke off and she shook her head. Never mind. I'll add it to the grocery list. Jenna breathed a sigh of relief. After Buddy had gotten on his tractor and left, she had made a mad dash to the kitchen to clean up the mess. The 2 pepperminty icing had gone in the trash along with the frosted cupcakes. Thankfully, there were only 2 that had frosting, and she rearranged the rest so it wouldn't look like any was missing. When her mom and mommy got back, and she didn't allow herself to think about how good she was getting at deception. She had just gotten the porch cleaned off from their almost snack when her mom and mommy returned. She had to make up a story about feeling better and coming down on the porch for some air. Thankfully, no one asked her about her dress, though she thought mommy was giving her strange looks. Today she had vowed to start telling the truth as much as possible anyway, and having to say she had spilled the powdered sugar was necessary. Are you going to the store today? Jen asked. Mommy shook her head. The new ad comes in the mail today. You know your mom likes to shop on Thursday. I could go for you, Jenna offered. Mommy frowned. By yourself? Yeah. I am almost 21. I should be able to make it to the grocery store and back without a problem. Mom picked that time to come back into the room. What's this? What's this? Jenna wants to go to the grocery store. What's this? Jenna wants to go to the grocery store? By herself, Mommy said. Her frown deepened. Jenna couldn't say that she wasn't disappointed. She had hoped Mommy would be on her side. Absolutely not. Her mom's mouth thinned into a straight line. Why do you even think of these things? Why won't you even think about it? Because, Mom said. But that was it. Just the one word. Because why? Jenna cried. Because I said so. Jenna stomped her foot, her frustration tipping her over the edge. That is not a reason. That is not a reason. That's an excuse just to tell me no when you really don't have an excuse at all. Mom stared at her for several long heartbeats. Jenna knew then that she had made another mistake. She had wanted her she had wanted her mother to take her seriously, to see her as a grown-up, but that wasn't going to happen. But that wasn't going to happen. Wait. Oh, yeah. That was him, but that wasn't going to happen. Not now. Go to your room. But Mom shook her head. Go to your room and stay there until you can be a loving member of this family. I can do that right now, she wanted to scream, the words at the top of her lungs, but it was too late for that. Mom, go. Go. Mom turned away, and Jenna had no choice but to trudge up the stairs and into her room alone. Once there, she threw herself across her bed and sobbed. She could never seem to make her mother think that she was an adult. She would forever be a child to her. Hopelessness crushed the air from her lungs. She rolled over onto her back and tried to breathe. Instead, she coughed and wheezed as her eyes watered. Was there anything she could do right? All she wanted to do was spend time with Buddy, and she would never be able to do that with her mother's approval. No, not until she could figure out a way to make her mother see her as something more than a child. What happened to all the gas in the tractor? Buddy looked up from the book he was reading as his dad came into the house. I don't know, but he did. He had used it last night to go see Jenna. Not once had he thought about putting more gas in the vehicle. He would have to remember that for next time, and there was going to be a next time. When she had told him that they were part of God's plan, he had completely lost his heart to her. Then and there. He had to see her again and again and again. He wasn't sure how it was all going to go, but he would find a way. Her cupcake icing might not be the best. Okay, it was terrible, but he wanted to be with her anyway. No one except his mom had ever made him cupcakes before. If you talk to your brothers, find out if one of them took the tractor to town. He shook his head. When when will you boys turn out responsible? Buddy didn't think he was supposed to answer that question, so he didn't. Instead, he stuck his fingers in his book to hold his place and watched as his dad got a drink of water from the tap. How did you know that? How did you know that you were in love with Mom? Buddy asked. His question must have surprised him. Dad turned around and gave him a strange look. How did I know I was in love with your mom? Buddy nodded. He tried to make his expression sort of bland, neutral. He thought the word was. He didn't want his dad to see how much he needed to know the answer. Dad leaned back against the counter glass still in hand. His face turned a little dreamy as he thought back. I had my eye on her a while. We lived in different districts, so I would only get to see her then when she came to visit when she came to visit her cousin one Sunday. I decided that I had waited long enough, and you asked if you could take her home. He nodded, and she told me no. Buddy's eyes widened. She said no? Yeah. What did you do? Buddy's fingers slipped, but he wasn't interested in keeping his place right now. His mother had told his dad that he couldn't take her home from a singing. How did they get from there to married with 6 children? I went to visit her district the next Sunday, and you offered to take her home from the singing. Buddy nodded. He knew how this was going to turn out. This was when his mother said yes. And she said no again. And she said no again. Again? As a matter of fact, how many times did it take? Buddy asked. Dad counted on the fingers of one hand, then switched to the other. 7. You asked her if you could take her home from a singing 7 times before she said yes? Your mom is nothing if not stubborn. Buddy knew that. He figured most people in Wells Landing knew how stubborn his mom could be. Why did you keep asking? He asked. Most people he knew would have given up after only a time or two. Because she meant that much to me. So true love needs persistence. Dad chuckled. I guess you could say that. Yeah. Where do you learn a word like persistence? Buddy shrugged. I pick things up. Dad turned and rinsed out his glass. Then set it upside down in the dish strainer. We underestimate you, buddy. He was pretty sure he knew what that meant, that they didn't give him enough credit for his brain power. Probably. Dad chuckled and clapped him on the shoulder. I'll do my best to not do that from now on, I promise. Buddy smiled. If you do, can I point to, Buddy smiled. If you do, can I point it out to you? To his surprise, his dad nodded. Yeah. Sure, if I forget, you can tell me, but only if you get one of the boys to take the tractor into town and fill it up with gas. He held out his hand for Buddy to shake. Deal. Buddy shook his hand, then stood. He had a brother to find. My dad says true love needs persistence. If you don't know what that means, it means to not give up. True love. Jenna's heart soared. She had been thrilled enough to get the message from Buddy on the shanty phone's voicemail, but to hear him talk about true love was almost more than she could hope for. Did that mean that Buddy loved her? She could only hope, because as much as she had learned from reading the romance novels that she had found at the library, she was in love with Buddy Ivandale Miller, and more than anything, she wanted him to be in love with her. I'm not giving up on seeing you, but I need to see you before church on Sunday. I'll come by on Saturday. How exciting! He was coming to her house. Maybe this was the best way for them to get together. They wouldn't be lying, and they could be persistent together. Surely Mom would understand if the two of them stood together. Now she just had to bide her time until Saturday. Why are you so antsy, girl? Mommy asked the following Saturday. They were sitting on the front porch, Jenna in a regular chair and Mommy in her rocker. They had thought to enjoy the day before it got too hot. Jenna knew that May was still considered part of spring, though in Oklahoma it felt more like summer most days. Jenna tried not to squirm as Mommy once again showed her how to make the stitches that would produce the pattern of Afghan, though she wanted to crochet. She had thought she might make it for her room, but every time she started it, all she could think about was Buddy and when he might show up. I don't know, she squirmed again and listened to her heart I don't know, she squirmed again and listened to hear if any tractor were coming their way. All she heard was the clop of horse hooves and the cart engines from the main road. I'm beginning to think that you have ants in your pants, Mommy said. I don't. I don't, Jenna said momentarily, forgetting that it was a saying and didn't literally mean that she had ants in her pants. She wasn't even wearing pants. I mean, of course not. I'm just a little. She broke off as the sound of hooves grew louder. She jumped to her feet, her small patch of crocheted yarn falling to her feet. What in the world? Next to her, Mommy stood as well. Buddy Ivandale Miller had just pulled up in front of their house, grinning from ear to ear, and driving the Miller's Sunday carriage. Buddy! Jenna sailed off the porch and raced towards him as he got down from the buggy. Her intent had been to fling herself into his arms and squeeze him tight, but she didn't think her mom or mommy would like that display very much, so she brought her steps up short and hugged herself instead. Hi, Jenna, Buddy smiled at her. Hi, Nadine. Mommy nodded. Buddy, what brings you here? What brings you out today? When Jenna came to my house a few weeks ago, we had planned to go on a picnic, but it started raining. I remember. Mommy's voice was carefully without emotion. Jenna had no way of knowing what she was thinking. So I came to take her on a picnic today to make up for it. Jenna felt Mommy's sharp gaze land on her before sliding over to Buddy. You did. It was somewhere between a statement and a question. Yeah. There went that sweet smile again. Jenna didn't think she would ever get tired of seeing him smile. It made him appear strong and confident, but one look in his honey-colored eyes and she knew he was as nervous as she. Meeting things head-on was more nerve-wracking than sneaking around. Have you discussed this with Charlotte? Buddy's smile faltered just a bit, but he managed to save it before it completely fell. No, but I could do that now. Mommy shook her head. She's not here. Will she be home soon? He asked. Jenna shifted her stance. She hadn't thought about Mommy upholding all the rules that her mom had held down. But why wouldn't she? She should be. Would you care to wait? Jenna looked from Mommy to Buddy. He nodded. Yes, please. The three of them made their way over to the porch. Buddy sat down on Jenna's chair, so she sat on the porch swing. It helped a little to be able to push herself back and forth and release some of the energy that was threatening to blow her head clean off. Not really, it was just an expression meaning she was overly nervous. Buddy seemed a bit nervous too. He kept his hat on and bounced one leg to a rhythm only he could hear, but it was definitely faster than any of the songs at any of the singings she had been to. even faster than the English music they played on the speakers in the grocery store. Would you like something to drink? Mommy asked. Water would be nice, Buddy replied. Jenna jumped to her feet. I'll get it. After all, he was her guest. Mommy nodded and took her seat back in her rocker. As Jenna hurried into the house, she had just gotten down a glass for Buddy when the thought occurred to her. Maybe she shouldn't have left him alone with her mommy. Who knew what mommy could be saying by now? Telling stories of some of the stupid things she had done over the years, both before and after her accident. There were a couple that, if she told Buddy, he might change his mind about her completely. He might think she was a liability. At least she thought that was the word Mom had used. She had to get back out there, and fast. She quickly filled the glass with water from the pitcher in the fridge and hustled back out to the porch. They were still sitting where she had left them. In fact, it didn't look like either one of them had even moved. Buddy's knee still bobbing up and down like the presser foot on Mommy's sewing machine. I have your water. She passed it to him and went to sit on the swing once again. Thank you. He took a big gulp and then a second one. His glass was almost empty. Jenna, do you want to practice your crochet while we wait? She looked to Buddy. He nodded. Yeah, sure. At least it would give her something to do with her hands. Do you remember how to make stitches? Jenna picked up the patch she had been working on this morning and studied the stitches. Yeah, I think so. 1 single crochet and 3 double crochets, all in the same loop. Then moved to the next stitch. She had only gotten 3 sets complete when the sound of a tractor could be heard. She looked up to see Mom chugging back home. Thank you. Mom's here. She put her crochet to one side and stood. Buddy relaxed in relief, then most likely realizing that he was soon to be faced with the task of talking to her mom about taking her out on a date, even after she had told them they couldn't see each other. He stiffened in his seat and drained the rest of the liquid from his glass. Where are you going, girl? Mommy asked. Here on the porch is a fine place as any to talk about a picnic. She supposed Mommy was right. She sat back down and tried to be patient as Mom parked the tractor and climbed down. What's going on here? Mom asked as she approached the porch. This young man here has come to ask out Jenna on a date, Mommy said. Buddy set his glass on the small table to his left and jumped to his feet. A picnic, he explained. She didn't get to go on one when my family had you over, remember? It rained and we had to eat inside. Jenna studied her mom's expression. There were no clues there as to what she might be thinking. Jenna was afraid it was a big fat no. A picnic? Mom said the word as if she had never heard it before. Please, Jenna silently begged. Please, please, please. This was bigger than a picnic somehow. She knew it. She wasn't sure how big, but maybe that was just the way love was. At my house? At my house, down by the pond. Mom's eyebrows shot upward. Pond. The word sounded like it was poison. No. She shook her head and turned to go into the house. Mom, Jenna cried. She wanted this so badly. Her mom turned, but Jenna could tell from the slant of her mouth that there was no changing her mind. Defeat settled around her like a wool blanket in the summertime. You will not go to a pond for a picnic alone with a young man. That will not happen. The kids all like to swim there in the summer, Buddy explained. It's warm enough out. My brothers will be there and their youth groups. We won't be alone. He thought it was because they might be all by themselves. He thought it was because they might be all by themselves, but Jenna knew it was the water. She stood. I'm not afraid of the water. She had drowned, but she couldn't remember much about that time. Just the peaceful feeling that everything was going to be okay. Then being jolted awake by someone sitting on her chest. They had pumped the water out of her lungs, and she had coughed up half the pond, but she had been forever changed. Mom pinned her with a hard look. You should be. And on that final note, Mom turned and went into the house. Tears filled Jenna's eyes. Mommy. She turned to her grandmother, who stood and sadly shook her head. Give her some time, Jenna Gale. She might come around. Mommy made her way into the house. The tears ran down Jenna's face. This was important, so very important. Why couldn't Mom see that? Buddy stood, but she couldn't see him very well. Tears blurred her vision. Don't cry, Jenna. He patted her on the back, but his touch felt awkward. I can't help it. She didn't want to cry. She didn't want to feel this helpless. He sank down onto the swing next to her. True love is persistence, he said. She's never going to change her mind. Buddy patted her shoulder, and this time the touch felt natural, loving. She will, he promised. I know she will. The 3 hours of church the next morning were some of the longest Jenna had ever spent. All she wanted to do was spend a little more time with Buddy. They were in the same room, but across from each other, yards away, unable to talk or touch, surrounded by their entire district. He had said they would find a way to get her mother to change her mind, but as of now, Jenna couldn't see that happening. Yesterday, after her mother had gone into the house, Jenna had gotten Buddy another glass of water, and he left. She had tried to talk to her mother about him for the remainder of the afternoon, but Mom was hearing nothing about it. Saturday was cleaning day, and she set Jenna to work with a broom and instructions on cleaning out all the cobwebs and dust and dust bunnies under the beds. Now it was Sunday, and a sea of familiar faces separated them. After the final prayer, they would all file out into the yard and prepare to eat. Then, if she was lucky, she might get to see him for a couple of minutes before they left for the day. It was the only thing keeping her upright in her seat. Normally she loved church. She loved the Word of God, loved even the sound of the elders' voices as they preached God's message. She loved the mindful lessons, sitting and allowing God to be the focus of her life for a few hours, complete focus. But today, she could only think about the sweet face of her Buddy. What would they do if Mom wouldn't change her mind? She closed her eyes. Lord, please, she prayed, please, 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 soften her heart and make her see how wonderful this is, please. Ow, she cried. Jenna's eyes flew open, and she snatched her hand away from the sudden pain. She turned to her mom, who gave her a pointed look. It was time to kneel and pray, and Jenna had been sitting there like a lump instead of obeying the bishop's instructions. And because she was sitting there like a lump and not obeying the bishop's instructions, her mom had pinched her, just like when she was a little girl and had fallen asleep while everyone worshipped around her. Sorry, Jenna whispered. She turned and knelt down at the bench, thankful for the first time in her life that church was over. With any luck, she would get to spend a little time with Buddy. But luck wasn't on her side. They might be part of God's plan for each other, but the good Lord didn't seem like He was going to make it easy for them. First, Jenna had to help set the food. Then Caroline asked if she would hold baby Holly while she fed Gracie. Jenna was more than happy to help. Plus, she loved babies. They always smelled so good, clean, and innocent. That was the only way she knew how to describe it, like the world hadn't touched them yet. The Bible said they were all born into sin. It was the one part she didn't believe. The Bible had been translated many times over the years, and she figured somebody got that part wrong. Though she would never tell her mom that would get her pinched for sure. She touched her nose to the soft down of baby Holly's hair and inhaled. Look at you with that baby. You're a natural, little mother. Jenna looked up as Joy Real approached. Joy was James's wife. He was the one that had been kicked. He was the one that had been kicked by a milk cow. Everyone had told her about him when she moved to town. She liked James and Joy. She did. But she couldn't stop herself from wondering why people acted like those with weakened brains needed to all know each other. And then again, if they didn't, she might not have ever met Buddy. I love babies, Jenna said, inhaling that sweet baby scent once again. Hopefully one day you will have one of your own. Jenna watched as Joy walked away. She went across the yard and was greeted by her husband, James, and their toddler, Lavender. James had been kicked in the head by the milk cow before Lavender was born. He seemed to be doing a fine job of caring for a child. That child had been a baby when it came. Could she take care of a baby? She had babysat before, and Caroline trusted her to help. The thought sent a warmth rising through her. A baby. She had never had dreamed, but a baby. She kissed the top of Holly's head, then searched the yard for Buddy. He was standing next to his brother, and he was holding Elisa May. He looked natural there, carting his niece. Jonah didn't seem to be fretting that Buddy might drop the child. No, she shook her head. She was dreaming ahead of herself. But what girl didn't? She had wondered her entire life up until the accident who she might marry and how many children they would have. Once she had the accident, she had wondered if she would ever get married and have those children. She had started to doubt that dream would ever come true. But who would want a wife with a weak? But who But who would want a wife with a weakened brain? A husband with the same? She almost giggled at the thought, but she stopped herself. Somehow that didn't seem right. Maybe because it was the truth. She and Buddy might both have their challenges. One of the words Mom liked to use. But together they would be just fine. But again, she was daydreaming ahead of herself. She knew how those things worked. People talked about things in front of her as if she couldn't hear, and she had been to the library. There were books there on everything, and she meant everything, but there was no possible way that she and Buddy could get married and have a baby if her mom wouldn't even let them date. She looked down at baby Holly who cooed and reached for the strings of her prayer cap. It's going to take some time, she told the baby. Holly blew a spit bubble and laughed as it popped against his nose. Jenna considered all that to be a good sign, and she wasn't going to allow herself to think anything else.